I'm Sarah Russell.
I'm JQ Walker.
I'm Hind, and we are
The Neurodivergent Report, a research-based podcast by and for neurodivergent brains.
In each episode, we'll explore topics relating to neurodiversity and coping strategies by reviewing the literature and discussing current topics.
We will also have interview episodes where we sit down with experts in the field and listeners like you, with the hope that together we can all learn to heal in community.
However you are able to engage, thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. You've made it. You've made it to Neurodivergent Report. We're so happy to have you. You got me, JQ, on the mic. I'm in a silly mood if you couldn't tell. And I'm here with my two lovely co-hosts. You guys take it away.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
I'm Hind. I'm trying to be more natural at this, so sorry if I'm cringe. I just did this, or I did this. I don't know what I did, but yeah, I did that.
Did you see how I opened the show? I think the more that you are able to do things,
The more
like, that was
comfortable.
silly, the more comfortable you'll be.
Okay.
Totally.
Once again with another research. And anyway, we are back once again with another research episode. What are we talking about today?
So today, hot off the presses, I have sort of 3 different studies that are looking at like why symptoms and diagnoses might look different from person to person. So yeah, we're just sort of going to break that down. You know, if you've ever met like 2 autistic people and they like aren't exactly the same.
Shocker.
Surprise, surprise. We're going to get into some of the layers.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's important to know. I mean, this is a continuation of the first episode we did on this, talking about symptoms and the diagnostic tests.
Part 2.
Yeah. And if you listen to the first one, which we highly recommend you do, you'd understand why it's really nuanced to think that there are different symptoms, because the way the DSM was done and the research was mainly centered around men, particularly white men. So other groups were not included. So now, hopefully, we're trying to shed light on the different presentations in other groups.
And I also want to say things like symptom variability, but I also know that that's not basic enough.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying really hard. Like, I don't want to sound too dumbed down, but also at the same time, yeah. Anyway, so it's like, I feel like almost every interview we do, I start peeling away all the layers of the person. You know, we ask about so many different layers of your identity on this show.
Yeah.
And like pretty much everybody we've talked to has had an ADHD and an autism diagnosis, or are suspecting that for themselves. And I don't know if you've been listening to our episodes, but like all of those people are
right,
nudge, nudge, wink, wink. No, but like all of those people are super different. And there's lots of different reasons why that might be. We're going to start talking about them. Not necessarily, yeah.
Well, really, I mean, we can cut this out. This is like
maybe I should ask what, like, maybe this should be like what do you think some of the things are, boys and girls? Like, if you had to sit and think about, like, what contributed to your symptoms, you know, because presumably if you're listening to this podcast, you have some kind of mental health symptoms, or you are trying to support someone who has mental health symptoms. So
I think there's also something to be said, too, about symptoms are a part of presentation, but presentation, this is what we're going to talk about in this episode. Presentation is also dependent not just on your symptoms, but on social factors and who you are as a person, not only just the groups that you fall into, but like every experience you have. It's why every single person
somebody else's perception of you also.
Yeah. True. Like, I'm definitely, like, if you were to ask, like, my dad and, like, one of my friends, like, what is Julia like? Or you were to somehow be able to get into their brain and be like, who is this person? Or, like, some random cashier at the grocery store. Like, they're going to all have very different understandings of, like, me. But, like, I just want to drive home the point that, like, we're going to kind of go into, like, a few of the biggest factors about why presentation is different, mostly because of those groups that people fall into. But even people within those groups are going to be different because not every person every person has had their own unique experiences in their lives that get them to where they
Mhm.
are.
Yeah, the really fancy way that the research explains that is they call it a two-way interplay between your biology and your environment. So,
Mhm.
like, both of those things are talking to each other all the time and influencing each other all of the time. And that starts, like, in the fetus, I think.
Mm.
I have a question.
That would,
Is
yeah.
this wrong? Zoomed in. I think it is.
Is it wrong?
It's
Why?
cute.
It almost does look like you have a headdress sometimes,
It's a cute statue,
which
It
is
is
pretty
cute.
cool.
but we're not.
Is that a gymnast?
I think it's a gymnast.
It's just a woman. It's just a woman.
It's just a woman.
It's just a woman.
She's just a girl.
Okay,
Hmm.
there you go.
Love that.
Okay, so
So we're just women. Like we're just three women, okay? And I think that we all have different oh my God, that's gonna sound so stupid. I think we all have different experiences.
do you want to dive into the? Do you want to dive into the hormones and
Friends.
symptoms and
So I'm like
let that be the
terrified to
anchor?
start with trauma history. I think the
Good.
reason that this is so uncomfortable for me is that like we're like dancing around the trauma history thing, you know?
Well, we can talk
Because
about. I'm down to talk about it.
I don't want to spend too much
That's the thing. Like,
time
okay,
up here.
so here,
I'm just like freaking out.
let me just try something. So I know I'm gonna maybe repeat things I said before, but we can
Yeah.
like edit this. Yeah. So something that I want to drive home the point of is that the way that presentations of any diagnosis or group that you fall into is going to be a combination of the symptoms that you have and also the social factors in your life. These can be things like, any group that you're a part of, gender identity, um, like your socioeconomic status, your race. Like these are things that impact like how you believe you should be behaving. So naturally there are going to be like variances between groups that we can kind of see patterns of. But even within those groups and between them, what is the most important thing to recognize is that every single person, if you meet one person with a diagnosis, you've met one person with that diagnosis. Every single person who has that diagnosis is going to be different because they're different people. And that's because each person has their own very specific experiences. And every time that a person has a new experience, they're diverging more and more into being their own specific person. And these are things that, it could be really anything in your life that's happened to you growing up, including trauma. And that is also a big factor in how presentations present in people.
Manifest.
Yes, manifest.
Mm,
Thank you.
And another
yeah.
thing that
Well,
I
and then
think,
it's also
yeah,
sorry, go.
another thing that I think is frustrating for women particularly, but I'm sure other groups that don't present in the typical way is getting the question, really? You have ADHD or you have autism? I don't see it. Well, because you have this
Mhm.
stereotypical image of what it is. And just because I
Yeah.
seem fine does not mean I have a lot of internalized struggles that you may not see because I'm conditioned to present a certain way.
Right. And I'm incentivized to present that way.
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's a thing that that's a pretty relatable thing, I think, to many, specifically ADHD and autistic people. But again,
for sure.
I'm sure all diagnosis would be the same. But
Do you want
yeah.
to? I think because I mentioned internalizing, we can go to that.
Yeah, it's sort of yeah, most of the time people catch your externalizing symptoms. We talked about that a little bit in the last symptom episode. You know, those are the ones that are sort of obvious.
Yeah.
They're your behaviors, sort of like hyperactivity or like being aggressive with another kid, bouncing off the walls, that's that hyperactivity piece. But like the internalizing stuff sometimes can be harder to see, like the spacing out, feeling bad about yourself because you like were late to an appointment or something, that shame piece. Like they do get to a point where people start picking up on that stuff, but usually it is after a prolonged period of suffering for
And
that
it
person.
often
So
even gets misdiagnosed. So this is the thing about women. We have this study that we pulled up that mentions that internalized symptoms like low self-esteem, anxiety, and shame are more common in women. And when are picked up, are misunderstood for mood disorders. So most of the time these women will be treated with antidepressants, and maybe later on, if she's lucky, she'll have this picked up, like, oh, maybe something is wrong. This is like a treatment resistant depression. What's going on here? Do we need to look at other factors? So it's pretty interesting to see the statistics,
Yeah.
validating our experience.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I sort of spent 30 something years just thinking that like I was broken and that like nothing I could do was going to change how I felt.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Um,
I'm starting to break out of that, but a lot of it is like accepting that like I just do things differently sometimes.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing how, like, I think a lot of and I think that I'm sure a lot of you listening would relate to this, but growing up thinking that you're broken and having it be told to you repeatedly all the things that you are, doing wrong or not adept at. But then you have maybe a diagnosis for ADHD and autism, and you're like, oh, this explains things. But then when you tell someone that, they're like, wait a minute, but you're so like normal to you can't have those things. And it's okay, which is it? Am I like having these like perceived like what is the word? I'm having a hard time with word recall today. Deficiencies. Like, am I having these perceived deficiencies or am I doing fine and there's nothing wrong? And now all of a sudden
Mhm.
you think that it's weird for me to be explaining these deficiencies that you've
Mm.
told me that I have in the past.
and
Mhm.
that adds to the already gaslighting that we do to ourselves once we get the diagnosis, because we're like, am I
Yeah.
really like that? Maybe not, because it's really
Imposter
hard for us
syndrome.
to conceptualize that maybe life should be easier, you know? So that just
Yeah.
adds on to the invalidation. And that also taps into what you said, JQ, which is it's all about the interaction of our symptoms with society. That, kind of causes the variability as well.
Yeah.
And there are some like unique symptoms for women that they've noticed with regards to ADHD. Emotional dysregulation is there.
Mhm.
um it's not something that is put into consideration, and might be leading doctors to think of something else. Disordered eating, I think women are susceptible to this for multiple reasons, but definitely women with ADHD, and also more somatic complaints for sure when it comes to women with ADHD. And all these things can definitely be not
What's a
looked on.
somatic complaint?
So basically, it could be like coordination problems, it could be pains, or
Pain.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So these are all
Because
Okay,
things
that
that
makes sense.
I was gonna say that a lot of symptoms then can get to a degree where it's just a comorbidity at some point.
and can easily be
Yeah, like this.
mislabeled as something else. That's also a thing. This is why I feel that when it comes to diseases like this, definitely finding a cure is something that we want to do. But there's something that we can do before that while we're finding a cure, which is prevention, intervention, making sure people are screened, making sure people get diagnosed at the right time makes a huge difference while we're trying to find and understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people with chronic illness sort of have to have like a unlearning process of like what they thought life should be like compared to what their life is actually like.
That's a good point. That reminds me of this TikTok I saw of this woman who was suffering from depression, and she finally decided to go and get some help. And it was such a joyful video. It's one of those videos that is so joyful, it's contagious. Because she said, I just did my laundry. That was so easy. No one told me this is easy. Oh my God, do you guys live like this every day? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I just cheered up. I'm like, yeah, it's supposed to be easy. I mean, no one likes doing laundry. Maybe some, my mother definitely likes doing laundry, but I mean, some people don't, and it's totally fine, but it should be easy?
So I think we've spent a lot of time sort of talking about the experience of like the gender difference experience, the women
Yeah,
experience
we can go to
of
something else. Yeah.
and yeah, totally. Let's talk about like this racial piece a little bit. And obviously because I don't have lived experience of this, I immediately went to go find a paper. And so I did. So I'm going to introduce the first paper. It was published in 2013, which I know sounds old, but it's not neuroscience or anything. It's a sociology paper, so it's still cool. It's called Racial and Ethnic Disparities in ADHD Diagnosis from Kindergarten to 8th Grade. Real cool. Published by American Association of Pediatrics. So like super reputable, very excited. I'm just gonna go right over to that paper now.
You should be proud. When I read
Um,
it, I was like, wow. Thank you for finding that one.
you think we found in that paper? I mean, just based off of the title, what do you think they were looking for in that paper? So they were basically trying to see what kids were being diagnosed with throughout kindergarten to 8th
Please,
grade.
JQ's raising her hand. So tell me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
I would to guess that non-white students were given the diagnosis. Well, they could have just been labeled as aggressive or given a diagnosis of like oppositional defiant disorder or something like that.
Okay. Which Harry
That's my guess.
Potter? Which Harry Potter house are you?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyways, you're Hufflepuff. So 5 stars, 5 points for Hufflepuff. There you go. That's
I was
great.
gonna say she's Luna Lovegood, but that's why I mentioned the glasses earlier.
She could be a Ravenclaw.
So yeah, out of their sample,
Just that, I guess.
my bad. I always wanted to be Ravenclaw.
What are you?
Anyway,
Really quick,
it's over.
What are you guys though?
I'm a Hufflepuff.
Okay, we got a little Hufflepuff action. Sarah does not know, maybe.
I never really. I don't.
Okay,
know.
we need both of you to get this done.
Identity is like whoever.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No,
You-
J.K.
please.
Rowling's canceled.
I know,
That's
but
so
Harry
true.
Potter isn't.
I don't know. I think
Against her. They don't like what she did. Don't let it ruin your childhood.
I know, but she's using her money and her financial privilege
It's
to
too much.
influence Supreme Court decisions in the UK that are going to impact real women's lives. So, nah, fuck J.K. Rowling. Don't watch her new HBO series. Don't go on the fucking websites anymore.
No,
Don't even search her stupid, wretched name.
Like related to
My
J.K.
bad. Anyway, mark that. We've got to move on. So, the sample from this paper is 17,000 children, by the way. So we're not talking like a really small, like bullshit paper. Their conclusion is that racial and ethnic disparities in ADHD diagnosis do in fact occur by kindergarten and continue until at least the end of 8th grade. I know for a fact, having gone to a high school with a large minority population, that those findings would have been found in the high school population as well. Probably also college population. Racism doesn't have like an age where it ends.
And I know what people are thinking. Is this also with controlling external factors? Yes. These statistics that we will mention are given also when controlling factors such as socioeconomic status, academic performance, and behavioral symptoms, which is shocking. So even if we have 2 people, same presentation, just different color, it changes your likelihood of getting treatment. It's unbelievable. Actually, African American children were 69% less likely than white children to be diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
It's shocking.
Hispanic children had a 50% lower odds.
And then other races, 46% lower.
It's almost like if you don't present exactly in the cookie cutter way, they're not going to do anything. And even still, they might not do anything.
That's the thing,
wild.
Sarah. That's what's shocking. Like even that.
Kindergartners, 5-year-olds, those babies still like don't have teeth in the front. Like they're like not even barely wiping their own butts.
Yeah.
And just like what
and
JQ
we've got
said,
teachers out there who are like, they're evil.
They have a conduct issue. They're aggressive. It's really dangerous. It's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those things where we're just trying to
not
say
having their needs met.
Yeah, and it's not one of those things where like we're good people and you're bad. We all have biases. It's really important to check them and leave them out the door when you're a teacher, when you're a professor, when you're a doctor. That's all we're asking. And if that happens, I think a lot will change. Those teachers will less likely see those children as aggressive or having a conduct issue if they just check their racism and bias.
I see it.
And You know what? The research on parent training. So there's like parent training programs that are available to kids so with ADHD or autism or whatever kind of mental health concern. And those parent training programs have found that the biggest indicator of improvement was the parents no longer see their kids as a problem. They now understood why their kids' behavior was presenting, and either they were able to find better ways to manage it, or they no longer saw it as a behavior problem, but more like, oh no, this is an indicator of distress. I need to help this child.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You
A
know,
little
And
love in
something
your heart.
this is a bit of like a unrelated thing and more of like a Julia conspiracy theory land. We should have a little graphic because I feel like I say that a lot for like Julia conspiracy theory land. But like like I wonder if they were doing some kind, I don't know how they would measure this, but seeing if like authoritarian parents, or like people, parents who engage in like authoritarian parenting styles would be more likely to probably not even seek out diagnosis, but also to still see their children as problems even with a diagnosis and like weaponizing the diagnosis instead of
that's a
using
good
it as a tool
point.
to
This brings us back to the previous episode that you definitely need to check when we talked about when parents and teachers are doing the questionnaires. Most of the time, obviously, there's a discrepancy between the teachers and the parents, but also parents of non-white children actually didn't even consider the questionnaires symptoms as problems, but they had noted that there are other symptoms that they considered a problem. So even their focus on what's important is completely different. And so you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And that was Julia conspiracy theory land. Thank you.
I'm just looking over the paper really quick to see if there's anything else we should talk about, but I think that's probably good. And we should.
I think we should talk about just medication
again.
use. Just that one I think is really important. Okay.
Okay, where is that? Is that in this paper as well?
I
Or is that in
summarized
the
it.
women papers?
No, no, it's in the racial discrepancies. I actually put it as a
Sure. Yeah, I would love to hear you explain to me about the medication differences because I didn't fixate on that point at all.
okay. Okay. So what's interesting also is, you'd think after getting the diagnosis that maybe most of the hard work is done, but they also noticed that even afterwards, there are some differences when it comes to medication use. They didn't dig deeper into why, but they said among children who were diagnosed, minority children were significantly less likely to receive prescription medication for ADHD in both fifth and eighth grade, even after adjusting for multiple factors, again, socioeconomic status, symptomology. So it's very sad and very peculiar. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of discrepancy on multiple levels.
Did they go into reasons why? Because if it's adjusted for socioeconomic class, does that mean that it's more based on like a social understanding and within a racial group of like distrust of like the medical system? Like I'm wondering what
That's a good point. That's a good point. So, this is a sociology paper. And so I don't think they dig deeper into the reasons, but rather giving us the information. And hopefully, other people will build up on that. But this is definitely something that is important and rightfully so. Minorities who were treated badly by the system have the right to, criticize it and not trust it. Actually, I remember in the obstetrics and gynecology, what's it called? Obstetrics and gynecology time when we were studying, there's something called a SIMS device in obstetrics and gynecology, and it was named after a guy that actually has a statue in one of those prestigious universities. I forgot which university, and he actually did research non-consent on African American women without anesthesia, and actually till this day, this kind of trickled down into African American women not receiving proper pain management for thinking that they can tolerate pain better, which is what that racist person
Yes,
thought.
okay.
So, and
Yeah.
they named a device after him. So, I mean, I completely understand. The more I study about the background of how we got where we got, whether names of devices, how we got these medications, you look at there's a dark history there of minorities being mistreated. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Wow, this is so much fun, guys.
Yeah.
Um, sorry.
Oh,
That's that dark humor.
yeah.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
So I think we can bounce back a little bit and talk about women again because one big area we haven't touched on at all is that sex hormone piece. Now, just really quickly, I'll introduce this study. It's published just recently in 2025. It's called ADHD and Sex Hormones in Females, a Systematic Review. I love that. And it was published by the Journal of Attention Disorders. And I say, like, that really caught my attention because that's a really big journal. So the fact that there's like now a systematic review about this topic makes me really happy. 3 years ago, we didn't really have that.
Yeah.
Anyway, why did you send me this paper?
Okay,
what do you
so
want to talk about?
when I found it, I was, this is great. And then I saw that it was recent. I'm like, that makes perfect sense because that wasn't there before. I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of women talk about this, and I've also noticed about myself that our symptoms change from week to week. And also some women who have hormonal imbalances like PCOS, pregnancy, menopause, this affects the symptoms completely. We had a podcast episode with a great host who told us, actually, she's a female, that, you have no idea how your symptoms will change as you age. And this is not something I think men go through as much. So I thought this is something that we need to shed a light on. And as you can see, this is such a recent study. So this is a topic that hasn't been at least this extensively studied. So I think it's really exciting and it fits within the narrative that we're talking about.
Jay, do you want to make a prediction about what they found in this systematic review?
Let's do this.
Oh my God.
I love it.
You said that men probably don't experience this, and just to like get people in the know, I'm gonna say what I know and then say a prediction based on that context. Is that I know that men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle where women have a 30-day hormonal cycle. So it makes sense that women are going to have much more variability, and also that like the bump of testosterone that men get is like, when you look at like a chart, it's nowhere close to like the bumps in estrogen and progesterone that women have. So what is this paper? Let me make a prediction about this paper. What is it called again?
Just sex hormones and ADHD.
Okay.
It's just a systematic review.
Yeah. Okay. So they're going to say women have a lot more variability day to day, a side thing, but like, obviously like the way that our work is structured, like a 9 to 5, where you need to have the same efficiency and output every day, is very much well suited for a guy. That's a side thing. Okay. But this paper specifically, yeah, more variability in women. Women have menopause, which is, I know, like your hormones do a thing.
I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah. I mean, we got time. Same thing with pregnancy, but like with men, as far as I know, it's just like their testosterone just slowly kind of goes down over time. Is that what happens?
I really didn't do well in urology, but I will review that now.
So, but I didn't.
Let's pull it up, guys. Everything is research based here. Let's do it. Yeah.
Pull it up.
That's a great point. I mean, I think I'm just going to go like ding, 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 because yeah, obviously the conclusion of this paper is yes, there are differences in ADHD symptoms because of I'm sorry, I'm going to start again. Yes, the sex hormones and like other relating hormonal changes influence symptoms in females or assigned female at birth. And they also say, like, please do more research on this because this is not enough.
I love that.
And I think that's the real tea.
Yeah,
is like
really
what the flow chart of what they were able to include and what wasn't there.
But they did go into details.
Because that was what I
think we're jumping in, right? We're going
so
into
they
details,
did
right?
mention, and I love that, when it comes to post-ovulatory early luteal phase, there's low estradiol, high progesterone. So they noticed that women reported increased impulsivity and hyperactivity. But then 2 other studies that they saw said there's reported exacerbation of ADHD symptoms, including inattention and executive dysfunction, with coexisting mental health problems like depression, irritability, and anxiety during the premenstrual late luteal phase. So if you feel that way, you're not crazy.
That's where I am.
Yeah.
I literally had a crying session with you guys earlier today.
Yeah. We hope it was cathartic. Obviously, women with
It was.
PCOS, have a different presentation and are more likely to suffer from inattention compared to people who don't. Pregnancy plays a role as well. What I also noticed, I was really shocked by, because these things we kind of expected. When you got your menarche or when you reached puberty, also made a difference. which I thought was really interesting. So let me pull that up and see what it says just to be accurate. Let me see. Childhood hook. Just what did see? Childhood. ADHD is amongst the most prevalent, obviously, in childhood.
Also, later in this paper, it talks about how your medication functions differently throughout your hormonal cycle. Um, and that is super brand new research, and most psychiatrists will not be able to accommodate that, but some of them might be willing to like fluctuate your meds sort of throughout the month.
Interesting, yeah.
Super evidence-based, real hip guys.
When it comes to puberty, they noticed that there's an exacerbation of ADHD symptoms as well as the comorbid mental health symptoms. But then they said, we saw another study that contradicted that. So obviously they're looking at gaps. They're looking at inconsistencies that need to be reviewed. So this paper not only is giving us specifics, but it's also letting us know what are the gaps and the things that we need to look at in the future, which I thought was really, really cool.
It's giving.
It's giving. 1 second. I just need to check about PCOS just to see that I got it right.
Yeah, I mean, there's also all sorts of like, I know we mentioned PCOS as a possible condition that could influence your hormones, but there are so many others. I think that's just the most common one. But there's also like adrenaline problems. You could have like a hyperactive thyroid, and that could mess with your hormonal cycle.
Yeah.
Could let's see, you could yeah, there's like I don't know, there's like a bunch of things.
Conversely, there's also comorbidities with ADHD and autism that can be affected by hormones as well, like other things. Like I know that hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is like when you have more progesterone, your collagen becomes less stable. So
Okay, what
another
I said
note.
about PCOS is scratch that because it's way more complex than that. So what they did here is that they investigated ADHD symptoms in women with PCOS and women who don't. Okay, and they said inclusion criteria did not include ADHD diagnosis or screening scales. So in females with PCOS, they noticed hyperactivity and the adult ADHD symptom score, as well as the childhood symptoms of behavioral problems and impulsivity, were significantly increased compared to females without PCOS. So obviously, they're saying there is some relationship between endogenous sex hormones and ADHD symptoms in females.
I'm just gonna go back and explain what is that androgens are. So estrogen and progesterone are like the female hormones, but androgens like testosterone also exist within the female body, and they also have potential side effects. You could also have like a testosterone like in what is it called? No, intolerance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like there's all sorts of diseases associated with like hormones that we don't fully understand because like we historically don't fund research for women and we don't fund research for trans folk. And research on hormones directly benefit only those people. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
No, thank you.
I think that we could do a lot for women's health if only we stop trying to punish like a certain portion of the population. And that's really what this whole episode has been about, I think, in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's just
You're right.
showing all of the ways that someone's perception might influence like
With the time we have left, I mean, I know that there's other things we want to talk. I'm assuming, like, as I don't know if we went through everything these
pretty
papers.
much let it all out. I think
Like,
I'm
we're
good.
because I think it might be helpful for the people listening. Because I feel like when they were to read the title of like presentation differences, I feel like they'd want to like have like, and I don't think that we have this, but like a list of like, well, like what is typical presentation? How is it different in women? How is it different in like other racial groups? Like, do you think that like we could do that or?
You're actually making a perfect point. So we try to pull up as much research as we can, plus our personal experience. But this is even something that the study is saying. They were trying to see premenopause and symptoms, and they said our literature search found no empirical studies that investigated ADHD during menopause. So it's interesting, but the clinicians' experiences and non-peer reviewed preliminary findings suggest many females obviously report an exacerbation of ADHD symptoms during menopause. So this is one thing that I want to tell
Yeah.
people who are listening, that I hope you get a clearer picture of the symptoms and hopefully feel validated by what we said. But if you feel like there's a lot of vagueness still, this is not because of the fact that we did not do enough research, but that there isn't a lot of research. And hopefully this sheds a light for future research to be done. And I'm so glad that this research in such a major journal is highlighting these things. And that makes me feel very optimistic.
Yeah, and I know that there's some research out and about. And honestly, I think there's like probably if you go to Google Images, like some kind of like Venn diagram situation of like how ADHD presents in women, cisgendered women, just plainly. That's
Yeah.
pretty accessible information. But as far as like, yeah, like menopause, pregnancy in different racial groups, I don't know
I
how
think the key word there was empirical research, because there is a lot of
anecdotal.
anecdotal,
Right.
and there's a lot of like qualitative studies out there, like thematic analyses, but
That's true. I got you.
yeah, but they're doing a really terrible job at like measuring this in a scientific way. Sorry, guys, you're gonna have to do better if you want to actually help the people that you're studying.
Exactly.
So, without further ado, definitely we're gonna have all of these papers linked. You know what? Maybe we should come up with some like cool resources for like what ADHD and autism combined might look like. Like there are resources out there, you know.
We'll definitely
Um,
find some. Yeah.
but we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Like there's wonderful creators out there in the neurodivergent community that we can just sort of look for and do like shout outs. And so I think that's how we're gonna wrap up this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, try not to reinvent the wheel all the time. I think we put too much pressure on trying to
We
get
super
everything
do.
done.
I was sitting here being like, oh my God, should I like pull up like other things I've seen of presentation in
I was
women and how
thinking,
ADHD
I did
could
not
work
do
together? And
enough
oh my God.
research in med school about this. I like need to
Yeah.
do this. You're
I
like,
mean,
calm
we
down.
weren't setting out to write a thesis paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my head, I was.
We're just summarizing sort of where the literature's at,
Yeah.
and where it needs to go, and like what the people can take from it now. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think what we can take from it now is just the knowing that experiencing emotions in an unpredictable way is a super normal thing, and it doesn't mean that you're disordered. You might be just experiencing regular grief or anger from, collapse or patriarchy or capitalism or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
maybe you lost someone.
Yeah.
Um,
And also, to
so
validate people who are, experiencing symptoms that maybe are not the typical, and also give them some hope. I do believe that this research gave me a lot of hope. Being this recent and being very, looking at the future and advising future researchers on what to do. I feel like, it's just to say we're heading there. We're on the right track.
I know, finally.
Yeah.
Let's hope
I'm
we can
so
take.
excited.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Is that a kettle? No, that's a cat.
No, it's actually my little neighbor boy riding his little vehicle around outside. He might be taking out the recycling, or he might be just fooling around.
Over fruit.
But that's adorable. It was him. Yeah, so I think what we're gonna do is just, like some resources, maybe some self-assessment things.
Oh, that would be
But then
great.
also just mention again that reaching out for support is super important. It is also terrifying, especially when you're overwhelmed. Like the last thing you want to do is figure out how to ask for help. Okay. And so if that's you, that's okay. You can reach out to us and we'll be community with you.
For sure. Yeah. And
There
I
you
feel
have
like
it.
when
There
these
you have
things
it.
kind of help, sorry,
No, you're good.
there
These
you
things
have
kind
it.
of help.
Yeah, these things kind of help.
Peer support. Yeah.
Feeling seen in community is really important.
Yeah.
I think we did a good job.
Yeah.
To be honest,
Yeah, I think we did.
when we
Wait, can we
started
do?
off,
Can we?
I wasn't sure where we're going. And
I
that's
want.
not on
I
you,
want to
that's
do
on
like
me.
our.
Yeah.
I want to do
You're
like
right.
our.
Hold on. Go.
Sorry. Can we do? I don't know if like this is like too like we didn't prepare, but like our thing that pissed us off of the week and encouraging people to also submit if they have any. Or no? Is that more of like an interview thing maybe?
I think that I think we should focus on building the brand, and then we can do these segments. I really like them, and I think we should put a pin on it. What do you think, Sarah?
I can't remember anything that's ever happened to me. Also, just don't want to sound super whiny. This episode has been tough. So maybe what we should do is actually what I'm gonna do is tell people about how I really wished that I was recording my mini breakdown earlier. Not a breakdown. It was just a venting session with my besties, okay? Like, stop. See, I'm so hard on myself. Really, I was just experiencing like secondhand grief, and firsthand grief. Gosh, like there's so much grief, people are dying in our personal lives out there in the world. It can be a lot. And so I think I want to tell everyone how I was able to calm down. Obviously, there was a little bit of venting that happened. There was definitely some crying that happened. But I want to highlight that while I was crying, I was making it a release. I was making it a self-regulation mechanism. And I did that by like tensing up my body in my awful, ugly cry. And I just held it there, and then I like breathed, and then I felt like release. And so that's like, I was pretending like I was fighting, and I calmed, and that's sort of sometimes the best we can do. Like, getting better doesn't mean that you're always perfectly grounded all of the time. In fact, if you are always perfectly grounded all of the time, despite everything that's going on right now, you're sus.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that means we're like dissociating, but sus. Yeah.
Sus is a better word. I like that one.
Yeah. This is more fun. To do that, like that is that is a human need. Like, we are hungry, we are thirsty, we need emotional release, we need to process our emotions, and whatever way that works best, whether it's what Sarah described, and also like, having people to do that with, if that makes you feel more comfortable too. Yeah.
Yeah. We're glad that you're doing better.
I'm glad that you're doing better.
I'm good. I feel like I stumbled.
You, him, you, Jay, and you, listener.
So yeah, so just to wrap up again, we will have some resources in the show notes about like self-diagnosis, because if you came to this episode thinking that we were going to go through the specific presentations of like women with ADHD and autism, like, so we'll have some resources about that versus like typical presentations. And
we were basically like, hey, so this episode is about symptom variations, and we were just like, they exist across all dimensions.
Yeah. So sorry.
Embrace the ambiguity.
Yeah.
Or else
every neurodivergent person's favorite thing, the ambiguity. We love that.
The dream, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't completely leave you in the lurch, but
no.
Yeah,
they got some things. We definitely mentioned, the way that symptoms are being described that are different from culture to culture. We explained how some symptoms are going to be internalized more in specific groups, like with women, self-esteem, emotional dysregulation. Some things there. We're being hard on ourselves, girls. I think we mentioned some things that they can take home. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, how do we usually end this? Do we say like a little?
I usually just stop the recording because it gets super awkward. That's why I have that outro clip. That's like, thanks for being here.
That's a good idea. I was just gonna say, whoever's gonna edit this, please make sure. Like, I've stumbled on my words so many times. I am sorry,
but this is gonna be fine.
Makes me look
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
On the Neurodivergent Report.
Wait, I think you gotta do it. We gotta do it one more time, I think. Just because I can't
do it.
Oh my God.
How can you do it again?
Because I
have a Zoom on my.
She's got a fancy camera.
You said you have the Zoom thing, right? And I'm like, I keep thinking that I can do it, but I can't. It's fine.
It's on my computer.
You're gorgeous.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I'll do like a little. Guys, thanks so much for being here. On the Neurodivergent Report.
You got
it.
Bye.
Doing that soon. It'll get
please
soon.
don't. It's amazing.
Thanks for being here. If you want to connect with the Neurodivergent Report, you can find us at ND Report Pod on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, Substack, etc.
If you're looking to support the show, the best thing you can do is subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. please do that.
And hey, if you want to check out more about us, visit our website at ndreportpod.com. And you can also go there if you want to be a guest contributor on the show.
Until next time, be well, do good.
Bye.